I've never seen the world this divided. That is a statement I hear in one form or another on a daily basis. And it's not a passing comment like, yeah, things are really strange at the moment, as if we're going through a brief season of weirdness. No, the current condition of the world is more serious than that. It's like society has effectively divided up into two opposing teams. Each team has a code of beliefs. Each side is yelling at the other. I don't care what you think. You're wrong. Well, your opinions make me sick. Well, with those opinions, you are sick. And on it goes, getting louder and harder to ignore. And people are becoming more and more stressed. I hear about it in my clinical practice, but I also see it on the streets. People are really edgy. So is it possible to be happy in a deeply divided world? And of course I'm going to say yes. What did you expect? I'm a clinical psychologist. I spend my life searching for light in the darkness. I'm a great believer in a person's ability to be resilient, to rise above their conditions no matter how awful they may be. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, Dr. Wes, I do believe the other side is intent on destroying my world, so I'm going to fight till my last breath to ensure that doesn't happen. Well, I get it. And I'm not saying that your principles are not worth fighting for. If you're called to be a fighter, then stay true to your calling. But I'm not going to advise you to become happy by crushing your opponent. I'm going to do something better than that. I'm going to teach you 4 ways you can be happy even in the midst of a deeply divided and seemingly unhappy world. 1. Remind yourself that you are a survivor. You may be feeling vulnerable now, thinking that your well-being is under threat because of what the other side is doing. But I assure you, you have been in much worse positions of vulnerability. Think about this. You were born into this world absolutely incompetent. That's right, you couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't solve basic problems. I'm telling you, you were totally incompetent. Even at the most rudimentary level, you were practically useless. Cute, but useless. For the first year and a half, you couldn't even make your way to the refrigerator, let alone open it and fix yourself a sandwich. And yet here you are. And you've had more meals than you have missed. And in fact, if you're anything like me, you probably could have done with missing a few more meals. You started out in life a whole lot more vulnerable than what you are now. And in your life up to now, you have faced a lot of challenges, and some of them have been heartbreaking. But you have survived 100% of every tough thing you've gone through up to now. Don't write that off as inconsequential. Your track record for surviving is significant. You've had a lot stacked against you, starting from the day you were born, but somehow you made it. Sure, there were people who helped you along the way. They banded together to help you figure it out, and the potential for supportive relationships is still there for you. Especially if you're willing to be there for others. There are those who will be there for you. Yes, living in a divided society makes us all feel somewhat vulnerable right now, but our survivor capability is much greater than our current vulnerability. 2. Be a hunter and gatherer of the good stuff. In the entire history of mankind, there has never been a crisis-free day. There is always something going wrong somewhere in the world. So there is no shortage of problems, and you don't have to look very hard to find them. In fact, problems are so good at grabbing our attention that we can easily spend most of our time thinking about what's going wrong and overlooking all the things in the world that are going right. The good stuff is always there, so set your personal radar system to look for the good things that are happening right before us. Recently, I took a vacation at a remote location. It was beautiful because it had an army of people making the place look gorgeous on a daily basis. Just outside of the unit that I was staying, a gardener was raking the lawn that had just been freshly mowed. I'm sure that he rarely ever received compliments from vacationers. So noticing the great work he was doing, I told him how his efforts were making the place look like a paradise. By his response, you would have thought that no one had ever complimented him. He was so appreciative. He told me that he was part of a great gardening team and that he would pass on my feedback to them as well. In those moments surrounding that interaction, the world felt unified and peaceful. When you intentionally look for the things in the world that are going right, it positively affects how you see the world. You become skilled at noticing the good stuff. You become more appreciative and less despairing about the divided world in which we live. 3, manage your psychological fuel well. Every day we wake up with a certain amount of personal fuel in our psychological gas tank. From the moment we wake up, we start burning that fuel. Thinking about the day ahead and all we have to accomplish, we burn a little more of that psychological fuel. Then actually doing the work for which we are responsible, well, that burns a lot more fuel. Then we may get a phone call, a text, or an email with some bad news. That burns through a heap of fuel. We may experience some criticism or something we've been working on fails. And that burns up a lot of fuel as well. Often by the time the day is over, we have completely exhausted our psychological fuel supply. And that's how we can be tipped over the edge. We get home and something irritating happens on the home front and we lose it because we have not got any more psychological fuel to help us absorb the irritation. Here's the key point. Don't allow yourself to run out of fuel before the day's over. Let me use an example. I have been riding motorcycles for a long time. In my life, I've owned a few, including this beautiful example of mechanical engineering, the Harley-Davidson Road King Classic. Wow, that was a great bike, and I appreciate my friend Pete taking this bucket shot of me riding it. I've never been cool my whole life, but that day I felt like I had a little more cool going on. A lot of the motorcycles I owned, there was not a fuel gauge. Instead, you had a reserve tank. And when your main tank started to run out of gas, you would know it because the engine would start to sputter. No big deal though. You would simply reach under the fuel tank and open a valve that switched you over to the reserve tank. The reserve tank held a small amount of fuel, hopefully enough to get you through to a gas station to refill the main tank. So in order to be happy in a deeply divided world, you need to keep some psychological fuel in reserve. Be aware of what activities or relationships drain you and don't let them completely exhaust you. And certainly spend more time engaged in life-giving, fuel-replenishing activities. Because when you run out of fuel, every negative situation that arises, every media story aimed at triggering fear responses, every criticism amplifies the thought that this is a mean, unhappy world. Try to manage your psychological fuel because navigating a deeply divided world when you're emotionally drained is really hard. 4. Be intentionally kind. Is it just me, or are the microphones of the world being disproportionately hijacked by critics and trolls? People who don't exactly have nice things to say. What is it about human nature that would drive some people to be so critical and judgmental towards others? I've done some soul searching here because I've said a lot of unkind things about others in my life. A critical spirit often comes out of a place of insecurity, jealousy, and envy. Sometimes we criticize because we're trying to be noticed, trying to be relevant, trying to have our voice recognized. For many years, I thought that criticizing another person would somehow make me feel better about myself, but it never worked. I ended up developing quite a habit of being judgmental, and that can be a hard habit to break. Yep, I'm a recovering critic. But there is something that has helped me avoid relapsing into being critical, and that is making the decision to be intentionally kind. When I purposely get busy delivering kindness to others, it energizes life in a way that being critical never does. And while that is my experience, research reveals the benefits of kindness are powerful and are available to everyone. For example, studies have shown that a simple act of kindness releases the hormone oxytocin, which has been scientifically proven to lower blood pressure, elevate self-esteem, and increase optimism. In fact, being intentionally kind has been shown to have the same effect as antidepressant. medication. Kindness stimulates the production of serotonin, the feel-good chemical, and that contributes to psychological healing and well-being. So if you're feeling down, go and show some kindness to someone. It will elevate their mood and your mood too. And if that's not enough incentive, studies have also shown that people who are kind have 23% less cortisol, the stress hormone, in their system, and therefore they age slower than the general population. So by being more kind and less critical, you're going to stay younger longer. Oh, what a beautiful deal that is. Here's a challenge for you. Show kindness to 6 people today. If you do this every day for a week, you will have made the world better in 42 different ways. Do that for an entire year, and that's somewhere around 2,000 ways that you have made the world better. Sure, the world is deeply divided at the moment, but you don't need to get wrapped up in despair. You can help put the world back together. Your kindness is the glue that can do it. So let me quickly review the 4 ways to be happy in a deeply divided world. 1. Remind yourself that you are a survivor. 2. Be a hunterer and get hunterer. Be a hunter and gatherer of the good stuff. 3. Manage your psychological fuel well. 4. Be intentionally kind. If just you and only you do these 4 things, there will be 1 less person anxious about the world's divided condition and 1 more person happily gluing the world back together. And the world really needs more happy people right now. So let's do this. I hope this video has helped you in some meaningful way. If it has, subscribe, like, recommend this video to someone you really care about. Join me in making life better for everyone.